They called you delicate. It was the galaxy's favorite word for your kind. Not weak, that was too direct, too rude. Delicate was the word they used in their soft, pitying tones. It echoed in the grand chambers of the Galactic Council. It was whispered on the trade decks of giant star freighters. Your bones were too light, they said. Your skin was too thin. Your emotions ran too close to the surface. You were living art, beautiful and breakable. You learned to live with the label. You built your cities under protective domes. Your ships had twice the shielding of any other race. You became experts in medicine and diplomacy. You had to. It was the only way to survive, the only way to exist among giants. Every day you woke up to their low expectations. You went to sleep with their gentle condescension. It was the background radiation of your life. They sent you gifts of reinforced alloys. They offered you protectorate status, for your own good, of course. You always politely declined. You smiled your thin-skinned smile. You thanked them with your too emotional voice. And you went on with your day. You learned to ignore the feeling of being a museum piece, a piece of fine crystal on a shelf full of hammers. You almost believed it yourself sometimes. Almost. That feeling was a lie. You just didn't know it yet. A new whisper had joined the old ones. It traveled on the star winds. It was a murmur in the data streams. The best star science minds were puzzled. Their grand instruments detected strange energy spikes. They came from the void between galaxies. They were faint, almost nothing. But they were consistent, a cosmic heartbeat where none should exist. On your world, the experts debated. They wrote long papers filled with complex math. They argued about star-borne radiation. They talked of unknown phenomena. It was all very academic, very distant. A problem for people with bigger telescopes and larger brains. They assured everyone it was nothing to worry about. Just a fascinating new puzzle for the galaxy's finest. But you felt something else. It was small, easy to miss. When you walked past a power conduit, you felt a warmth, a fleeting, pleasant hum that had never been there before. You'd place your hand on a data slate, and for a second, the chill of the metal was gone, replaced by a gentle thrum of life. You dismissed it. Static electricity, an overactive imagination, the product of a delicate constitution. Your friends mentioned it too in passing, joking about the city's heating grid acting up again, or how their personal devices felt warm to the touch. It was a shared secret you didn't even know you were keeping. A quiet prelude playing just for your kind. A note of warmth before the fire. Then the sky began to burn. There was no warning, no declaration of war, no demand sent over the comms. One moment, your sky was its usual placid blue. The next, it was blotted out. Their ships simply appeared. They were vast, jagged things of dark metal. They looked like shards of a broken nightmare. They hung in the air with an impossible silence. All across the planet, they arrived as one. The silence was the worst part. The galaxy's conquerors usually announced themselves. They loved speeches. They enjoyed broadcasting their superiority. These invaders did not. They simply watched. An entire world held its breath, waiting for the first blow to fall, waiting for the reason. There was none. Then, the rain started. It was not water. It was a slow, orange mist that drifted from the bellies of the silent ships. It coated everything. Buildings, streets, people who were caught outside. It didn't sizzle. It didn't burn. Not at first. It just fell. A steady, unnatural drizzle of amber. It was strangely beautiful, like a sunset in liquid form, a sunset for your entire world. You watched from your window as the orange film settled. The galaxy had pitied you for your fragility. It seemed they were right all along. Your beautiful glass world was about to be shattered, and you could do nothing but watch it happen. The alarms were the first sound to break the silence. A planet-wide scream of failing technology. Lights flickered, then died. The planetary shield, your great protector, shuddered and went dark. Communication systems dissolved into static. The automated transports on the streets coasted to a stop. One by one, the pillars of your civilization crumbled. It was a symphony of collapse. The water purifiers shut down. The atmospheric regulators coughed and went silent. The complex systems that kept your cities alive all failed. They were not destroyed by explosions. They were simply unmade. The orange mist seemed to be the cause. It seeped into every circuit. It broke down every connection. From their ships, the invaders watched. Their silence was now a statement. It said they did not need weapons of brute force. They could simply turn your world off. They watched your society descend into chaos. They saw the fear in the streets, the confusion, the helplessness. This was their victory, a quiet, patient, and total conquest. You were trapped. The doors wouldn't open. The emergency systems were dead. Outside, the orange mist grew thicker. It was no longer a gentle rain. It was becoming a fog, a rolling, glowing storm of amber energy. The air grew warm. The beautiful sunset had revealed its true nature. It was not an ending. It was a furnace being lit. The firestorm touched your skin. You were pressed against the window of your small apartment. The electronic lock was dead. The street below was a scene of silent panic, and the orange fog was now seeping through the seals. It coalesced into a glowing tendril of light. It slithered through a crack in the frame. It reached for you. Your mind screamed. This was it. The end. The fate of the delicate. It touched your hand, and nothing happened. There was no pain, no burning, no searing heat. Instead, there was a feeling you almost recognized. It was the warmth you had felt near machines, but magnified 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. It was not a fire that burned you. It was a fire that greeted you, like a long-lost part of yourself returning home. A jolt went through your entire body. It was not electricity. It was life. Pure, raw energy flooding into you. The orange light didn't just touch your skin. It sank into it. It flowed into your veins. It lit up your bones from the inside out. You could feel a new power blooming in your chest. A power you had never known. A strength you could never have imagined. The glass of the window began to glow. Not from the outside, but from the inside. From you. The fear was gone. The panic was gone. In its place was a profound and shocking clarity. You looked at your hands. They were faintly glowing with an inner golden light. The invaders had sent a firestorm to end you. They had no idea what they had truly unleashed. A wave of intense heat rolled down the street. A power transformer on the corner finally gave way. It erupted in a shower of sparks and molten metal. A family was huddled in a doorway nearby. They had no time to react. They cried out, shielding their faces, but the heat would surely take them. It was a wall of fire, consuming everything. Without thinking, you acted. You didn't know how. You just knew you had to. You raised your hand, the one that still glowed. You pushed, not against the air. You pushed with a new power inside you, the power that bloomed in your very soul. You pushed against the fire itself. A shield of golden light shimmered into existence before you. It was 5 feet from your body. It met the wave of fire head on. The inferno washed against your shield. It did not break. It did not even flicker. The heat dissipated. The roar of the explosion was silenced. You held it there for a second, a living wall against the destruction. Then you let it go. The street was scorched. The transformer was a ruined husk. But the family was safe. They were staring at you. Not with pity. Not with condescension. They were staring with shock. And with a dawning, impossible wonder. You looked at your own hand. You had just controlled fire. You had just commanded energy. Them calling you fragile was officially the galaxy's worst joke. Through the swirling orange mist, you saw them. At first, it was just a flicker, a glint of gold in the gloom, then another, and another. Across the street, a figure stood, their hands outstretched. They were turning a wave of fire into harmless, drifting motes of light. On a balcony above, another person was pulling the toxic orange fog away from a crowded shelter. They were shaping it, calming it. You were not alone. You were not a freak. You were not an anomaly. You looked down at your own glowing hands. You looked up at the others. A silent understanding passed between you. Across the city, across the entire planet, it was happening. Your entire species was being reforged. The firestorm that was meant to be your funeral pyre. It was your crucible. The invaders thought they were wiping out a species of delicate, breakable things. They had made a catastrophic miscalculation. They had analyzed your biology. They had studied your technology. But they had never understood your potential. This energy, this fire, it was not alien to you. It was a part of you. A dormant, sleeping power that had finally been awakened. The chaos in the streets began to change. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Hope. People were looking to the glowing figures. They were looking to you. The delicate had found their strength. The glass was being forged into steel, and the hunt was about to be reversed. The embers of resistance began to glow. You learned quickly. The power felt natural, instinctive. You found you could draw the heat from a burning building. You could pull the fire into yourself. It didn't harm you. It nourished you. It made the golden light inside you burn brighter. It made you stronger. You gathered with the others who had awoken. There were dozens in your district alone. Elders, children, people you had passed on the street 1,000 times. All of them now glowed with an inner fire. You worked together. You learned from each other. An elder showed you how to weave the energy into a solid barrier. A young child giggled as she turned burning debris into floating, harmless butterflies of light. It was terrifying and beautiful all at once. The hunted were finally beginning to hunt back. You were no longer hiding. You were moving through the city. You were saving others. You were pushing back the firestorm. You learned to communicate without words. A shared glance. A focused thought. You could feel the presence of your kin, a network of light in the growing darkness. The invaders had turned off your world. So you were turning it back on. One life at a time, one street at a time. You were no longer victims. You were the city's new immune system. And the infection was starting to notice. Their sensors were reporting impossible data. The invaders watched from their silent ships. Their mission was proceeding as planned. Life signs on the surface were diminishing. The planet's technological infrastructure was gone. Yet, there were anomalies, pockets of extreme energy, readings that defied their understanding of physics. On their main view screen, a drone's feed showed a street view. It showed a burning vehicle. It showed huddled civilians. It was exactly what they expected. Then, a figure walked out of the smoke. It was one of the natives. A delicate creature, according to their intelligence reports. But this one was glowing. It raised a hand, and the fire from the vehicle flowed towards it. The fire was absorbed into its body. The commander of the invasion fleet stared. He reran the sensor analysis. The native's energy signature spiked. It grew stronger. The drone's temperature sensors reported a drop in the ambient heat. It was impossible. Energy could not simply be eaten. This broke every known law of star science. They had come here to extinguish a candle. Instead, they had ignited a star. Their confusion spread through their ranks. Drones began to move in erratic patterns. They were sent to observe the collapse. But the data they sent back was nonsensical. Life signs that should be fading were stabilizing. In some areas, they were growing stronger. The orange, weaponized mist was thinning in places. It was being drawn into invisible points on the ground, drawn into you. The invaders could not understand why you still lived. They had planned for every contingency, every possible resistance from a fragile species. They had not planned for you to become the fire. Their perfect, silent conquest was falling apart, and they had no idea why. It was time for a more direct approach. Their soldiers came. Drop ships descended through the orange sky. They landed in the ruined city squares. Ramps slammed down, and out they marched, hulking figures in black armor. They carried massive plasma rifles. Their faces were hidden behind menacing helmets. They were here to restore order, to crush whatever anomaly was disrupting their plans. You saw them land in the plaza near your shelter. You and a dozen of your newly awakened kin stood ready. The fear was a distant memory, replaced by a cold, burning resolve. The soldiers formed a line. Their commander pointed a metallic finger at you. An order was barked in their harsh, guttural language. The plasma rifles were raised. They fired. Bolts of pure, white-hot energy screamed across the plaza. Your people had spent generations dreading such a moment. The raw, violent power of the galaxy's warlike races. You braced yourself. Instinctively, you raised your hands. You expected to create a shield. You expected to block the energy. But the power inside you did something else. It reached out. It met the plasma bolts not with resistance, but with hunger. The searing energy did not impact. It was drawn to you. It flowed into your outstretched hands like water down a drain. The heat, the light, the awesome force of their weapons. It all became part of you. The golden glow of your skin flared, becoming a brilliant, blinding white. The soldiers stopped firing. They stared in utter disbelief. You had just eaten their attack. You felt a surge of power unlike anything before. It was exhilarating. You could feel the raw energy of their weapons fueling you, making you stronger, making you burn brighter. You looked at your kin. They were all glowing with the same stolen fire. One of them actually burped, a small puff of golden smoke. You couldn't help but smile. Their fire only made you stronger. Their greatest weapon was now your greatest food source. This changed everything. The invaders in their black armor took an involuntary step back. For the first time, you saw fear in the galaxy's giants. You had to tell someone. The galaxy had to know. The pitying elder races, the arrogant conquerors, everyone who had written you off. They needed to see what you had become. Resisting was not enough. Surviving was not enough. You had to send a message of burning hope. Your group decided on a target, the central comms tower. It was the tallest structure in the city, a monument of your delicate engineering. It was dark now, of course. Its systems had been wiped clean by the orange mist. But the structure itself was sound. If you could get it powered, you could send a signal. The journey was a battle. The invaders, now desperate, threw everything they had at you. Soldiers, drones, armored vehicles. But their weapons were useless. Each plasma blast you absorbed made you more powerful. You learned to use their energy against them. You wove it into shields that could repel physical attacks. You shaped it into waves of concussive force that sent their soldiers flying. You reached the base of the tower. It was a silent giant against the burning sky. The main power conduit was dead. But you were the power now. You and 5 others placed your hands on the cold metal. You focused. You pushed the fire inside you into the tower's veins. It was like pouring life back into a dead body. Slowly, the tower began to hum. Lights flickered on, hundreds of feet above. The main broadcast dish began to align itself. It was drawing immense power from you. But more was flowing in from the invaders' futile attacks. You were a living engine, fueled by your enemy. You found the main broadcast control. You opened a channel to the entire galaxy. You began to speak. Your voice, amplified by fire and hope, raced across the star lanes. The message shot through the cosmos. It traveled faster than light. It bypassed normal channels, burning itself directly into the communication systems of 1,000 worlds. On the bridge of a Xylosian dreadnought, the captain stared as your voice replaced his orders. In the quiet halls of the Lore Republic, senators stopped their debates to listen. On 100 different worlds, the races who had called you fragile heard your story. They saw what your words carried. Live data streams from the surface, a view from your own eyes. They saw the invaders' plasma fire being absorbed. They saw you and your kin, glowing like newborn stars. They saw you standing defiant in the ruins of a world that should have been your grave. Disbelief was the first reaction. It had to be a trick, a sophisticated data forgery. But the energy signatures were undeniable. The feeds were raw, unedited. The ancient, wise Elder Ones sat in their silent meditation chambers. Their third eyes opened for the first time in a century. They had seen the birth and death of stars, but they had never seen anything like this. A species thought to be on the verge of extinction, reborn in fire. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. The pity was gone. The condescension was gone, replaced by a profound and terrified awe. They were witnessing a fundamental shift in the balance of power. A new player had joined the game, a player whose abilities defied their understanding of star science. The galaxy had to reconsider everything it thought it knew about life, about power, and about you. Your message ended, but its echo was just beginning. You had not asked for help. You had not pleaded for rescue. You had made a statement. We are still here. The fire is ours now. And we are not delicate. The invaders were listening too. Their gambit had failed. Their soldiers were being pushed back by unarmed civilians who fed on their weapons. Their silent, perfect invasion was now a galactic humiliation. The commander of the fleet, gripped by rage and fear, made a final, desperate choice. If he could not have the planet, no one would. His order was simple and terrible: ignite the world's core. His ships moved into a new formation. They repositioned themselves high above the atmosphere. Their ventral cannons opened, not with plasma, but with something far worse. Beams of graviton energy designed to drill deep into the planet's crust. They would destabilize the molten heart of your world. They would turn your home into a short-lived star. Alarms you could not hear screamed on their bridges. They were breaking every galactic law. Unmaking a planet was the ultimate crime. But they were beyond caring. They had come to extinguish a small, fragile light. Now they would extinguish the whole world to stop the suns you had become. The first beam struck. The ground shuddered. It was not a tremor from an explosion. It was a deep, guttural groan from the planet itself. The sky, already orange, began to pulse with a malevolent red light. The invaders were tearing your world apart from the inside out. Your new power could stop plasma bolts. But could it stop a planet from dying? You had to try. There was no other choice. Looking to your kin, a new understanding dawned. You could not fight this from the surface. You had to go deeper. You had to meet their energy with your own. You had to become the Firestorm. You sat on the shuddering ground. You closed your eyes. You reached out not with your hands, but with your consciousness. You felt the network of your people across the planet, a web of golden light. You had drawn power from the enemy's fire. Now you had to draw it from the planet's core. You had to channel the very energy that was being used to destroy you. You sent a single thought through the network, a single command: absorb. Together, you reached down through the rock and soil, down through the deep, crushing pressures. Your combined will became a conduit, a living channel into the heart of your world. You felt the raging, chaotic energy of the destabilized core. It was a sea of unimaginable fire. And you dove in. You pulled that energy into yourselves. The pain was immense. The power was terrifying. It threatened to unmake you, to burn your very consciousness away. You felt your physical body begin to dissolve. Your kin across the planet screamed a silent, psychic scream as they too were consumed by the torrent. But you held on. You became the channel. The raw energy of the core flowed through you. It surged up through the planetary network of your people, and it erupted from the surface. Not as an explosion, but as a controlled, focused beam of pure, golden light. A beam that shot from the ground and met the invader's graviton weapon in the void of space. You were no longer just controlling fire. You were becoming it. Your physical forms were ash. Your consciousness was a river of energy. You were the planet's last desperate defense, a living immune system fighting its own fever. The invaders watched in horror as your world refused to die. It was fighting back. The struggle lasted for what felt like an eternity. Your unified consciousness, the combined will of your entire species, battled the invaders' technology. The energy you channeled from the core neutralized their beams. You were a shield made of starlight, an impossible defense born from an impossible evolution. Slowly, incredibly, you began to win. The planet's core started to stabilize. You were learning to tame it, to soothe it. You drew off the excess energy, venting it harmlessly into space as shimmering auroras. The invaders poured more power into their weapons. But it was like trying to flood a sun. You simply absorbed it. You grew stronger, brighter. Their ships began to break. Their systems overloaded, unable to handle the feedback loop you had created. One by one, their graviton beams sputtered and died. The last ship held on for a few moments more, its commander refusing to accept defeat. Then, its engines blew out in a silent flash of light. The fleet was broken, defeated. Their final, terrible gambit had failed. Silence returned. The red glow in the sky faded. The ground grew still. The immediate threat was over. You had saved your world, but you were forever changed. You had no body to return to. You were no longer beings of flesh and bone. You were the Firekin. The sun rose on a world that was both scarred and saved. The orange mist was gone, burned away by your ascension. The ruined cities stood as monuments to your rebirth. And in the sky, you remained. A constellation of golden, sentient lights. Your people. Your family. You were no longer bound to the ground. You were as free as the starlight. The invaders' broken fleet limped away into the void. They left behind a legend. The story of the fragile race that became a firestorm. They had come seeking easy conquest. They left having witnessed the birth of gods. They thought you were fragile embers, meant to be crushed and forgotten. A footnote in their bloody history. Now you are the suns that light the way. The galaxy watches you, no longer with pity, but with reverence. You are the dawn of the Firekin. The beautiful, breakable glass they tried to shatter had become an infinite mosaic of stars. And your light was just beginning to spread.